Greetings, travelers.
Greetings, travelers. Wow, we are in. Where are we in? What are we in? We're in. No, this isn't August. We're in spine tingling September.
Yes,
I don't remember where the hell I was.
we worked hard on that.
Yes, we did.
And I'm excited because I have some spine tingling tales to tell.
Wow. Well, this is going to be a really fun episode because Bo is leading it, right?
Yeah. Hi, Bo.
Hey. I wasn't sure where you're going to go with September, so I was on the edge of my seat going, what is the S going to be? Spine tingling is very good. And that fits today's story too.
Exactly. And this is one you suggested yourself. Mm-hmm. And you are a aficionado, if not a studied person on this topic. And now I went into this topic knowing the ghostly side of it and not as much on the true history of it. So I'm gonna let you lead the Wayback Machine and take the lead on this. Now, Erica is kind of going in.
She's blind on this. She has no idea.
I'm completely blind on this because you said the name of it. You're like, I want to do an episode on Fox Hollow Farm. And I was like, I have no idea what that is.
we were driving right by it when we went to Hodag. And I was like, maybe we should drive by here. And then I was like, no, I don't. If after Erica's reaction to Waverly Hills, no.
Yeah, no. I don't think she would have walked on the property if you told her anything about it.
No, it doesn't have to be a place I have to take her blind, but it's too late now. We're gonna rip the Band-Aid off. So again, this is one of those. This is true crime, gang, and not pretty stuff. So if you want to skip to another episode, it's fine. But I think you want to listen to this because there's a lot to tell here. And some of it is important to be told. So.
Yeah, and
I would say skip to the latter half if you
just want to hear the ghosty stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the one thing I want to do a little shout out before we start this, because I know I'm going to get freaked out and go down a whole path. So I want to do a shout out to our travelers. We've had a ton of events in the last month. We have a ton of events coming up. Please check our Facebook, and you can also look on our eerietravels.com to see where we're going to be, because a lot of us, even Bo, is coming out to a lot of the events that are coming up. And one of the things I want to say is that we just fully appreciate you and thank you so much for your constant support of us. It's amazing. I've gotten to meet some travelers at the last events, and we absolutely adore you and thank you for being part of this journey with us.
Yeah, and some of us, we missed a couple events because we were ill, last minute cancellations, but we will be back to those in the future, we promise. But on the website and the Facebook and all the other social medias is how you keep track, and that's where we make all our
announcements. Facebook the most, because we update there. Mark will put out a cute video if he has to cancel something. So
it's the easiest to update on our phones, and we can do that wherever.
As we're laying sick in bed, because that's definitely how we've all been feeling.
Yes, we have all recovered from squonk flu, and the poor squonk people were like, we're so sorry, don't call it squonk flu. I'm like, well, it's kind of what happened, so I can't really argue that.
Now. They can't tell us what we can and can't say. It was the squonk flu.
Yeah, we love you, Squonkapalooza, but yes, we all got sick there, and it was not just us, a few other booths. So,
are the cryptids of the corn guys okay?
They're better now too. Everybody's better. So anyway, enough about flus and bugs and all that.
Okay, so let's talk about this farm. So Bo, I heard we're getting the Wayback Machine. I got my cold brew. Let's do it.
All right, so we're gonna go back to 1978. We're gonna hop around, because as I was learning about, relearning about this, I knew about it. It kind of flowed better if we kind of meander.
Yeah,
I'm down for meandering.
It's very meandering.
This is not a to B to C. This is A C D E F. Yeah, B.
Yep, that's the roadmap right there.
Okay.
All right, we're going to Westfield, Indiana, and Fox Hollow Farm is an 18-acre farm built in 1978. It's a huge farm with like a bunch of acres of land. And it's like heavily wooded in the back, in the quote unquote backyard. Our story is going to mostly focus on 3 locations in the house: the indoor pool, the backyard, and an apartment that's like attached, like over the garage, I think, is what
Okay.
I saw in a video. So in 1988, a family moved into the farm, and they are the Baumeister family. Herb Baumeister, his wife Julie, and 3 children. The children aren't named, and I think that's on purpose because I would want to be anonymous too.
Yeah.
They seem to be a typical middle class family, you know, as they always say in like a true crime doc. They're normal. Everyone's, you know.
Did they light up a room when they walked into it?
Oh,
Because
I don't think so.
I'm
No,
firmly
It's
convinced.
very
that-
nondescript.
Yeah.
Nondescript family.
I want everyone to know that I do not light up a room. So just in case anyone was putting me on their victim list, I will not make for a good true crime documentary.
Yeah.
So
No, I don't light up a room either. I kind of make it darker and a little sour in there. All right, so the
I sure light
family.
up rooms.
So I would like characterize Julie. I don't know if this is fair, but I would characterize her as like a doormat, kind of simpering woman. And then her husband, Herbert, he kind of looks like a typical guy. He's thin. He is white, you know, he's a typical middle-aged guy. But Herb has always been a weird person. And that's the nicest way I can put it, because it's more, seems to have come out of the womb irreparably damaged. He was born in 1947 in Indianapolis, which is a place we have all been to. Herb was the oldest of 4 children. I could not find the names of his siblings, and I think that's also by design. Unlike other people who are serial killers, his childhood was typical. He didn't have like a mother who was like distant, or a dad who's abusive, or siblings who tortured him. He was just a normal, quote unquote, kid.
okay.
But when he started going to school, he started acting out. He had weird compulsions. I could keep using the word weird, but I should try a different word. Strange, unsettling compulsions involving bodily functions and also deceased animals. So he definitely had that, you know, in the triangle of sociopathy. He had the killed animals part down, and also the bodily functions thing. Like,
I don't love that.
he once peed on his teacher's desk because he was angry at her, and other classmates things as well. So he used his body in like a weapon. His father, who was an anesthesiologist, recognized that there was something going on with Herb. So he took him to a psychiatrist, and he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and paranoid schizophrenia. But then his family just let it go. They didn't get him mental health care. They didn't follow up on it. They were like, well, there's labels now. It's fine, you know?
No.
And that will be his downfall a little bit here. In school, he didn't have many friends, and he was very antisocial anyway. He made other kids nervous because he would be like, hey, come look at this dead cat, or would pee on their desks. Nor did he have like girlfriends or boyfriends in school. That wasn't Herb. But his life kind of changed when he went to university. He graduated high school and he got into Butler University, which I believe is also in Indianapolis, but don't quote me on that. I know it's in Indiana. But he only made it 1 semester. He wasn't great at school, and he couldn't keep a job either. And then he met Julie. And Julie is his, I guess they kind of had a normal blossoming relationship, in that I don't understand why she would marry him otherwise. But later, I believe after he was captured, she admitted that they very rarely were intimate, and it was only to like conceive their kids. So as they had 3 kids, essentially that was the only times that they were intimate with one another. It was more like a roommates situation.
Yep.
But she did love him in her own way and was very much like would kowtow to what he said and ignore things that maybe she should not have ignored.
Oh, I don't love that.
Yeah. Herb kind of got it together a little bit in that he opened a bunch of thrift stores in Indiana, and he owned like a whole chain of them. And they started doing, at first, they were doing really, really well. So that's how they were able to purchase the farm.
Okay.
Because it was a very expensive piece of property, and it only gets more expensive. Like the family who owns it now, it was like millions of dollars. It's
a huge piece of land.
Yeah, it's huge. It's
a big house with an indoor pool.
Yeah, so. It's like 18 acres, and I think the indoor pool was in the basement too. Like it was atypical for any house at that time. So now we're going to get into the trigger warning part of this episode. So in the 1980s, we're going back to the 80s, 11 young men were killed and dumped on the side of the highway. They never caught the person who did it. Still today, they have an idea of who did it. Spoiler alert, was probably Herb. But I think that he was called, we don't know if it's him, but he was called the I-70 killer.
The I-70 Strangler.
Yeah, I-70 Strangler.
As someone who grew up in Ohio in the 80s, that was right on the border, so we knew about it.
It seems like in that time period, there were a lot of killers who would grab their victims who were hitchhiking or at truck stops and looking for a ride or someone to quote unquote hook up with. And it seemed like a lot of people were, getting victims that way. And Herb was allegedly one of those people.
One of the things, because I come from that true crime like you do, Bo.
Yeah.
Like super highway, so to speak. Oh, that's ironic. I said it.
Yeah, that's a bad turn of phrase.
Bad choice of words. But I think a lot of people don't, we're so used to some of the technology and some of the things that we have now that didn't exist. Like I was watching something the other day and it was talking about, a couple had an argument and the wife was like, "You're drunk, I'm leaving you here," and started walking. And of course, our immediate thing is, well, why didn't you call an Uber or why didn't you call a cab, right? And not that there weren't cabs back then and stuff like that, but there weren't the easy modes of transportation. And there was a whole time period, so to speak, where,
and people didn't have phones either. She'd have to
find there was payphones, landlines in the 80s.
Yeah, there
were landlines, but there was a whole time period where not that it was 100% safe, but you didn't have the criminality that would necessarily, you could hitchhike. Like a lot of younger people, that's how they got around because they didn't just have a car or they didn't have a bus route or whatever. They would just hitchhike and people would give rides to hitchhikers. That was a thing from one.
And a lot of
more trusting too, because they didn't have the internet. So they weren't like, wow, there are people at every turn who might kill me. Everyone was just like, oh, everyone's just like me, normal, and we're gonna be friends together in their truck.
Well, that's the bulk of his victims were young gay men.
Yeah.
And it was still the late 70s, early 80s, even all the way through the 80s, because this happened like through the 80s. And most of them were 15 to 20s.
Yeah, there seemed to be like a really lean toward like younger boys, like not men.
I'm going to do a quick listing of the names because we always want to say the names of the victims.
Yeah.
So, Michael Sean Petrie was the first, June 16th, 1980. Maurice Allen Taylor, July 21st, 1982. He was 22. Delvoyd Lee Baker was 14, October 3rd, 1982. Michael Andrew Mick Riley, also 22, disappeared May 28th, 1983, was not found for some time. Eric Allen Rottiger, 17, and he vanished in May 7th, 1985. 29-year-old Michael Allen Mike Glenn. And most of these guys were found in various states of undress. Now, he was found in August of 1986.
Yeah, and usually in a ditch or like a little off the highway.
Yeah, James Boyd Robbins Jr. Was 21. He went missing October 15th, was found 2 days later, October 17th. 26-year-old Stephen Lynn Elliott was found August 12th, 1989, and he was found in Ohio. That was still on I-70. Clay Russell Boatman, 32, disappeared August 14th, 1990. And again, his family denied he was a homosexual, but all the others were known. Thomas Ray Clevenger, 18, disappeared September 6, 1990, and was found in near a railroad track in Greenville, Ohio. And then 42-year-old Otto Gray Becker was the last known victim of the I-70 Strangler, August 6, 1991. And people said they saw him in a car with another man. So, that's the main I-70 Strangler victims. They all died of strangulation or suspected victims. There's a couple that have been.
Mark, when you were growing up in this time period and you guys kind of heard about these cases, did it like change how people acted, or were they like, oh, those are gay kids, that's not going to happen to me?
At this point, we had moved to West Virginia, so it wasn't as bad, but we still heard about the Ohio, because we're right on the border of Ohio. This was more, it was men, and we didn't hear the gay part until later. So that was when, all right, no more hitchhiking for anybody. And you remember, this is also height of satanic panic.
Right.
So that's what
they're like, I'm going to be stolen and used in ritual.
That's what it was. The first theory was, it's cultists.
It's always cultists.
Yeah. It's always cultists.
But this is before he bought the farm.
Yes. The killings of the I-70 Strangler stopped when the Baumeister family bought Fox Hollow Farm.
A little after, yeah. There was like maybe one or two more, but.
Yeah, because I think he had that hunting ground already, and
he bought it in the 80s, right? Late 88, I think. 88, he bought the farm. Yeah.
Yeah, and 88 May. He bought the farm.
He doesn't buy the farm for a while, sadly.
No.
So what's really interesting about this is I think a lot of people don't realize that not having really good theories on this, not really sharing what was going on, also affects the fact that people couldn't be prepared for it. And we also don't really know what happened in those cars. We know that they were purportedly gay men, right? And that being a gay man and being out was not a thing, especially in these areas.
It was dangerous. Yeah.
It was dangerous. It wasn't safe. But they were found. And were they found to have been sexually assaulted or no?
They were in various states of undress, and it was implied, but it's not dramatically said.
Knowing what happens later, I would say they were in the middle of sexual relations, before he murdered them or strangled them, I guess would be a better word for it. Now we're going to jump cut a little bit to 1994. So in 1994, Baumeister's son was playing in the backyard, and he saw something on the ground. He, of course, being a curious young child, goes to investigate and finds a complete human skeleton just in the backyard. I believe it was found in because there was a bunch of trees. There was like yard and then trees.
And then
so
forest,
I think, like deep forest. So I think that the remains were found under tree cover. It wasn't just in the middle.
Right on the edge of the forest. Yeah, it was right on the edge.
And the family didn't report this to the police because Herb had a good story to tell. He said that because his father was an anesthesiologist, that this was just a specimen that he had, and he asked Herb to, store it at his house. So he just put it in the backyard. It's fine. So when
Wait,
his family,
whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. What in the actual F? Are you kidding me?
no, so he didn't deny it was a real human skeleton
No,
either.
he didn't
was
say,
like,
"Oh, it's a haunted house. I'm building a haunted house in our yard." That
No.
was
With
my
a real human skeleton.
A
And by the
complete
way,
human skeleton.
my dad told me to store it, so I was like, we should okay. You have to be in such a state of weird denial mentally to accept bullshit like that.
That's
Julie was
exactly
one to accept bullshit.
Yeah.
I think she was very comfortable with the life that they had built. Did not want to make waves because I don't think Herb was a nice person to live with. And she just was like, you know what? I'm going to just let it go. It's fine. Yeah, your dad's specimen is in the woods. It's whatever. Cool.
No.
Fine. So
No.
Herb was like, oh shit. And he hid the skeleton in the garage. He's like, no one will remember it's here. So he just put it in the garage.
I shouldn't leave it outside. I probably should put it somewhere where it will be safe.
Mm-hmm. The garage.
Okay, crazy pants.
What's really going on is he's gotten lazy.
Yeah.
He used to store them way, way, way out in the woods.
Yeah, or
And
just
as
leave
he's
him
been
in a ditch. Like I think he felt untouchable at this point because he'd gotten away with it
perfect
for
place to hide the body.
so long. And what we'll find out, spoiler alert, he's going to be killing people in this house and had gotten away with it for such a long time under his wife's nose. He thought he could do anything at this point. He was untouchable. He was the greatest serial killer to ever live. Well, he didn't keep it in the garage forever. He kept it in there till everyone, quote unquote, forgot about it. And then he made sure to take it further out in the woods and bury it. And then I guess when his wife asked about it, he's like, oh, I got rid of it. Or dad came and got it,
Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Say it like that. Okay.
We're going to move a little forward before we go back again. Later, when law enforcement did go on the property, because you'll find that they had a hunch, they were able to identify 9 victims on the property. And to this day, forensic experts are still excavating the property and have found 10,000 human remains. 10,000 pieces of bone.
Yep.
Thus
How many
far.
bones are in the human body? I'm clickety clacking. I need to
clickety clack.
Because
well, while we're talking about this, let me go while you're looking that up. June 24th, 1996 is when they found at least 11 people.
Yeah.
And they were able to
Apparently
identify.
I can't count because I could say 9.
They were able to identify 8 right off the bat. And then they think they've identified a 9th, but there's still additional victims. So we're going to go for the time periods here. Okay. So John Lee, Johnny Bayer, who was 20, he had went missing on May 28th, 1993. Jeffrey Allen, Jeff Jones, was 31, and he had went missing on July 6th, 1993. Alan Lee Livingston, 27, also went missing on August 6th, 1993. His remains were one of the initial ones found, but weren't identified until October of last year, October 2023. Steve Sperlin Hale, 28, went missing April 1st, 1994. Alan Wayne Broussard, 28, went missing June 6, 1994. Roger Allen Godlet, 33, missing on July 22nd, 1994. And Michael Frederick Mike Kieran, 45, was last seen on March 31st, 1995. And then Manuel Resendez, 34, was last seen in a gay bar in downtown Indianapolis on August 6, 1993. And it wasn't until January of 2024 that they were able to identify some of his remains on the farm.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to say that when I was looking this up, there were news articles from a couple months ago because of the one they found in 2024. This case is still ongoing. They are still actively trying to identify the remains, but because they're all skeletal, It takes more time, and there's not a lot of DNA from back then because it didn't exist.
Yeah,
Well,
and if there's no dental records or you can't get fingerprints from any of this. And one case they still think it's been posthumously linked to this, and that's the unsolved disappearance of Jerry Williams Comer. And he's 34, and he was last seen around August 8th, 1995. And his vehicle was found at an Indianapolis mall, and he fits the profile of the victim so well, but he's never been found. That's why they're still searching, and they're still trying to identify the remains.
There are 206 bones outside of teeth, which then that's more. But even let's just throw teeth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we're talking maybe 230 bones per person, because I'm going to assume if they find a tooth, they're going to count that as a bone, right?
Yeah.
So if you're talking
10,000 plus.
So
bone.
we're talking, what is that roughly?
That's at least like 50 victims, probably more.
Yeah. And that's the people they haven't identified, correct?
Right.
Correct.
Okay. So when do they think this started?
All right, we're getting there. I mentioned the indoor pool. Let's just take a moment to imagine a pool inside, humid, carpeted, by the way. This is where Herb killed all of the Fox Hollow victims. He would lure them home after meeting at a gay bar and would take them into the pool and asphyxiate them. One of his victims, a man named Terry, would be the one to catch him. He suspected Herb had killed one of his friends using an alias. Herb wasn't going by Herb when he was at the bar. So Terry, being a hero and a great person, I hope someone gave him an award. He agreed to go on a date with Herb, knowing, that this man may or may not have killed his friend.
Guy's pseudonym was Brian Smart.
Yeah, that's right. So Herb and Terry went down to the pool. Of note, Julie is usually upstairs while these things are occurring and either doesn't hear anything or pretends she doesn't hear anything. It's not really clear. She doesn't really offer much regarding what happened. Herb and Terry went in the pool. I believe they had a few drinks, and Herb tried to wrap a pool hose around Terry's neck. And of course, Terry fought him off, and Herb was like, hey. I thought we were doing autoerotic asphyxiation. I thought you were into this. This is my kink. It's fine. Let's try it. And Terry is like, no, and escapes the house. Later, Terry was able to get Herb's license plate when he saw him again at the bar. He knew him as Brian, but when the police ran the plate, they would find out it was Herb Bowmeister.
Oh, wow.
So the police go to Fox Hollow, and this is part of it that's really irritating, because when they tried to get on the property, Herb said no. And apparently he could just say no. And
so
I guess, Julie also was like, no. Yeah.
Initially.
Yeah. And Julie would later, let them on the property because Herb's behavior was getting so scary that she wanted to get her and her kids out of the house.
Wow.
So then Herb is starting to feel the pressure because the police are closing in. His thrift stores are starting not to do too well, and Julie is getting a little uppity. She is not just rolling over and letting him, do whatever he wants anymore because she's suspicious. So Herb decides he's going to, when he finds out there's a warrant and they're going to search his house and arrest him, he flees to Ontario.
Goes on vacation.
Yeah, he goes on vacay to a park in Canada, and using a weapon he, I believe, was registered to him, he committed suicide in a park.
Unalived himself.
Oh, yeah, we shouldn't,
do any further investigations and studies.
Yes. So he left a suicide note.
Well, let's pause. We need to take a break, and we will come back to what Herb decided to tell us as the police were closing in.
You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
Most know Florida as the land of endless sunny beaches, but the state is home to numerous eerie legends and mysterious creatures. The Everglades is home to the elusive skunk ape. In Key West lies an uncanny doll reputed to have a life of its own. Join Mark Muncy and illustrator Carrie Schultz as they uncover the history behind the state's creepiest stories and unusual locations. The Dark Side of the Sunshine State, presented in Eerie, Florida, from History Press.
Greetings, travelers. It's Erica, one of your favorite co-hosts from Eerie Travels. Don't tell Mark I said that. But I wanted to offer you a very unique opportunity. You can always advertise with us here at the Eerie Travels podcast or on one of our live shows. If you're interested, you can email info@eerietravels.com or go to our website, eerietravels.com, and use the Contact Us form. We would love to hear about your great product and be able to share it with all of our travelers. And don't forget, as Mark always says, we'll see you on the other side. We're back. I can't believe I didn't know anything about this, and now I'm going to have to go on a deep dive. And I need one of the documentary filmmakers out there that does amazing documentary films.
There are a few.
There are a few, but they're not all winners.
I want a good documentary filmmaker to make a documentary about this, because some of them that are out there do amazing. So, okay. So things closing in, his wife's getting a little bit, you filled the property with too many deaths. So here's the thing that gets me about this. I'm going to throw this and then you tell me the suicide note. Because this is what happened with this situation with Jeffrey Dahmer, right? So I'm going to throw this out there. And I've said this many, many times on this show. We've all probably had encounters where a dead raccoon, a dead rat, squirrel, a mouse, something, and a dead mouse under your house, you will, that rhymed. You will smell, like it will be, no matter where you are, you're going to smell this thing. So I just go with the amount of dead bodies that he just had strewn about. I would almost think all this property smelled like was
way out in the woods. Way out in the woods.
I'm sure if the wind shifted in just the right way. Yeah.
The place is huge. This is a farm in Indiana. And a lot of forest off the beaten path.
Man, though, you would think that you would just think that the smell from the volume, because the time period you guys are talking about is roughly around a decade, if I'm correct, right, in my math. Yeah. It's
like close 2 decades almost is about when his killing was happening. It started in the 80s, and in the 90s is when the warrant went out.
Yeah, but even with 15 years, with the amount of people that he is responsible for, you would think that anyone near that property would be like, what is going anyway? That's my
if I remember correctly, and I didn't write this down, so if I am wrong, I apologize in advance. I believe most of the bodies he set on fire. Yeah. And so only bones were left. And if there was just bones, it's not going to smell. So that's probably what he was doing. Or he buried them and you wouldn't smell them then either. Depending on how far he
burned them and then buried them. So yeah, he had a very specific pattern, except for the ones that when he was just doing the roadside drops.
Yeah, because he was, closer to home now, and he was like, "Oh, I have to put these somewhere before people connect them to me." He didn't put them very far away from himself because I think he liked to go visit.
I think he got, like I said, he got lazy and tired of walking out in the woods. So.
I mean, there was a lot of woods. I don't super blame him not wanting to walk out there. Maybe he should have stopped killing.
Tell Erica his suicide note.
Are you ready, Erica?
I don't know, but I'm gonna try. Go ahead.
So part of the reason that we probably don't have a lot of documentaries about Herb and his family is because of what's in his suicide note. So his suicide note basically said, "I'm sorry for making a mess in the park where he shot himself. He's sorry that his marriage was broken. And he's sorry his thrift store chains failed." That's it.
But
That's
but
it. No mentions of victims, crimes, nothing.
So we don't know anything about what was going on in Herb's mind. We don't know how many victims he had altogether, besides that there's 10,000 pieces of bone in his backyard. He offered us nothing, took all of his secrets with him.
wow.
And I think it's one point in the letter he mentions he was going to kill himself someplace else, but he saw kids there, so he decided not to save the
Yeah.
children.
He's so empathetic.
But we do know his last meal was a peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah, I think I remember he made the sandwich and ate it on a park bench in the park
And
before
then
he shot himself.
and then shot himself with a 357.
Yeah,
So
that's
Ugh.
right.
good
Oh,
gun to do it. Good gun to do it.
Yeah, no, that leaves a mess, but yeah, I feel. I mean, first of all, he's a horrific monster. Like,
Mhm.
and we talk about that when we're talking about all these cryptids and things like that. We also talk about the fact that, like, I feel like no matter what creature, monster, extraterrestrial, ghost, no matter what we talk about, nothing is as horrific as what humans will do to each other. Like,
Yeah.
this guy is truly a monster. These numbers are these are like Bundy level numbers of
Bundy
killer.
didn't even have that many. He had
No,
a handful.
no,
People just were very drawn to him because of
Yeah.
he
Oh,
was
he had
so hot.
he had way more than we
He
we
escaped
know.
a couple times. Yeah,
Yeah, he did escape a couple
didn't
times.
look
He went
like,
out a window. Yeah.
he didn't look like a wormy guy like this guy did.
He
Wasn't.
looked what his nickname was. His nickname in a lot of the documentaries and a lot of like the YouTube shorts was Herbert the Pervert, which I'll mention, but I don't know if anyone actually called him that at the time. I feel like it's just now for clicks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's the story of Herb. Now we got to get into the story of Fox Hollow Farm
Yes.
because it doesn't end there. So, a couple named Rob and Vicky Graves move into the house sometime later. I think it's about a decade later because
Adorable people. I have
yeah,
spoken to both of them.
I think that the house was owned by a guy for a while who was going to renovate it and then didn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Never lived on the property, never heard of any ghost stories, but he knew about, Herb. I feel like if you lived in this area, you definitely have heard about him. But
Yeah,
Rob and Vicky
It is in the
did
middle
not.
of nowhere. It is in the
Yeah.
middle of nowhere. So it's one of those, it's not like he had a lot of neighbors.
Yeah.
So
No, that makes sense.
So Rob and Vicky find this farm and there's a really low asking price for it. It's in their range and they're really excited because it's a beautiful large property worth
huge.
millions and millions of dollars worth. So they were looking at the house and they weren't bothered by the house's dark history after the real estate agent kind of, let them in on the secret because they were like, why is this house so little money? Why can we afford it? It's, a manor. But very quickly after, things start getting weird.
Vicky mentioned to me the first thing was the vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, when she was vacuuming the pool house, because again, carpet in the pool house.
Yeah.
The cord of the vacuum got pulled out of the outlet. And, at first she thinks, oh, I, vacuumed too far. So she plugs it back in, keeps vacuuming, and looks over as the cord is pulled from the outlet by a spirit.
Yeah, an unseen hand, she said.
Yes.
And she's a scientist. She has no belief in any of this until that moment.
I mean, how could you not after seeing
that's her
that?
door blowing open on her mind right there. So, and
Okay.
when she tells that story, you can still see it in her face.
And I mean, because you can't really pull a cord out by accident unless you tug it pretty hard.
Mm.
So the thought of like an unseen force pulling it out seemingly on its own while the cord is still loose, that's crazy. Like the thought of that is scary, especially in the pool room, which I feel was probably, I don't know why, but when I imagine it, I've seen some pictures of it, but I imagine it really dim, smells a little weird, very humid. You know, it doesn't have good vibes there in the pool.
No.
A lot of chlorine.
Oh
Well,
yeah, it probably smells so bad.
Chlorine and bleach.
Well, one of the other things I was going to bring up that, I personally, I'm not going to this place under any circumstances, is you've got to assume the number of traumatic deaths that have happened there, people would get stuck. Like, whatever happens after we die, I think a lot of times, and we've talked about this, like trauma of being asphyxiated or drowned, like that's sudden, and they think they're in a safe space having sex, right? And
Yeah.
this is what happens. Wow.
Like imagine being taken like back home after meeting a great guy in the bar and he has a manor house. Like you think you hit the jackpot. You're like, wow, this guy is amazing. And then you get asphyxiated in his pool.
Yeah, no.
Like I'm sure that they had like a wild like oscillation of emotions.
Robert told me one of his friends from work was in need of a place to stay, and a guy named Joe. Joe's super nice. Oh, you know this story then, Bo. Okay.
Yep.
I wasn't sure if you did.
Yep.
Do you want to tell it?
Sure. Joe was as Mark said, worked with Rob and was like consistently late because he lived an hour away from work. And, that's a long time in traffic. And I would be late too. So Rob offers him up the guest apartment, which I believe was over the garage, like on the second story up some stairs.
Like 1,200 square feet. It's almost as big as my old house.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like it's not a little dinky apartment. It's nice. So he moved onto the property with his dog Fred, and then he started having nightmares as soon as he moves into the house. And then he started sleepwalking and I don't think he knew he was a sleepwalker. It only started in the house. And he tripped and sliced open his hand on a glass that he'd like broken while stumbling around his house.
Wow.
His dreams were very specific. He was running through the woods for his life, being chased by something.
Oh.
Yeah. And now he was helping take care of the house. That was part of his rent, was just to help take care of the lands. And he said he was a Navy guy. And one of my favorite quotes from him was, you basically, just like painting a battleship, you start at the front, work your way to the back, and by the time you're at the back, it's time to start all over again. And that's what Fox Hollow Farm was like. He's like, you start working on the grounds at the front. By the time you get to the woods, it's time to start back at the front again. And then he was having these recurring nightmares on top of it, and he was having night terrors where he couldn't wake up, where he was vivid awake but couldn't move.
Yeah, and if you see Joe in like a documentary, he looks haunted by everything that happens here. Even like as an ex-Marine, he is shook.
Our good friend Shannon LeGros of Into the Fray, this was her first paranormal investigation. She went to Fox Hollow and she talked to Joe and Vicky and Robert, and she got all the stories. And our other good friend we spoke with at DragonCon, Richard DeStepp, he wrote a book about this called The Horrors of Fox Hollow Farm, and we'll put the link to that in the show notes. And oh my gosh, this is the start.
Yeah. This isn't even the scary part.
Yeah.
I don't like anything that's happening right now. So I hope that I noped out of this way back at the beginning of this story. I'm uncomfortable being in this way back machine. Yeah. And this is terrifying. And I want out.
Well, you'll find that Joe is a kindred spirit with Erica in that he also nopes out of this at least 2 times.
ASAP. Yeah. He bailed ASAP.
So This is when the man in the red shirt comes in.
Oh,
What?
So Rob and Vicky were, I believe they were in the kitchen in the house, and they happened to glance outside and saw a man in a red t-shirt seemingly watching them from the lawn,
Yeah.
which is already, you know,
If they're in the middle of
disconcerting.
nowhere, that would be very.
blue jeans and a red shirt.
Yeah.
Oh my
But
gosh.
Rob wasn't too worried about it because, you know, the house has a strange history and people like to visit strange places, you know, which is what this podcast is about.
Enthusiasts, yeah, serial
Yes.
killer enthusiasts, and people who listen to podcasts like ours tend to
Yeah.
go to these places.
So they just were like, oh, it's fine. We'll put up CCTV cameras and have them run 24/7. So this next encounter that I found may or may not be two separate encounters. It depends on the source because I
Okay.
found it like on a blog and then I found it again on Paranormal Witness. And we're going to go with that version because that's the one Joe tells.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Joe was doing his dishes in his apartment and someone started banging on the door loud, like bang, bang, bang. Joe said, I'm coming, you know, because he thought maybe it was Rob or someone, you know, coming to visit him. And he had to shout because Fred, the dog, was barking, but the banging didn't stop. He threw open the door and no one was there.
Okay.
So he turns around, he shuts the door, he turns around and he sees a figure sitting in his bedroom. When he flips on the,
Nope.
this isn't even the part where Joe nopes out. When he flips on the light, no one's there. Though Fred has been staring at the same spot that he saw the figure. Later, Joe takes Fred out for a walk.
Is
He
Fred
said
the
that
dog?
Fred is the dog. Yes.
Okay.
Who in the Paranormal Witness show was in the reenactment was a golden lab, but I don't know if that's what he was in actuality.
I don't remember. I saw the dog in passing when we talked on a Zoom, and it just was in the background. I can't
You
remember.
saw Fred, this famous dog, and you didn't ask to interview him?
I'm sorry. He's not very talkative.
No, he's not. But you will find that he is the bravest dog in the whole world.
Okay.
So Joe takes Fred on a walk, and apparently, if it's nice night out, they do this pretty regularly. They'll walk back and forth on the driveway because it's, a long driveway because, again, large property.
Yeah.
As they were walking, Fred started barking at the forest. When Joe turned to look, he sees the man in the red shirt walking toward the woods. Fred, naturally, being a brave dog, chases after the man in the red shirt. Joe hesitates, which understandable. I would hesitate too.
Wow.
But goes, oh, I need to stop Fred. If he goes in the woods, he's going to get lost. So he chases after him. And at first he doesn't see anything. In the reenactment, he's like pushing branches aside, screaming Fred's name, trying to find him, turning, this way and that, trying to follow this out of his barking. And then he finds Fred standing in like a clearing, staring at something behind him. And when when Joe turns around, he sees the man in the red shirt staring at him.
Who is the man in the red shirt?
We have theories.
No idea.
Joe, being a fan of Erica and her process, noped out and ran back to his apartment.
Yeah. Dog's on its own, going.
I think he did get Fred, put his leash back on him.
Both here, and I said that they both just looked at me like, "You better not leave me behind."
Garrus is like, "You're gonna leave me behind?"
Yeah, Garrus wouldn't go, so that's good. I'm good.
Later, when Joe, goes back to his apartment, I don't know if this is the exact same day, but he goes back to his apartment. He's like, oh, nervous. Bang, bang, bang on the door again. This time, Joe throws open the door and no one's there. Though he noticed that he had a door knocker on his door and he noticed that it was out, like when someone's holding it to knock it into the door again.
Yep.
Like this is like the invisible, unseen hand thing again that Vicky sees. And before his eyes, it knocks again.
No, moving. I'm done. I was already done, but now I'd be super done.
So Joe tries to nope out again, slamming the door and locking it. But then the door on its own bursts open. But there's no one there, naturally.
That's not true. There is absolutely something there. Whether you can see it or not, that's a different story.
All right, this is the part that's going to make Erica want to leave the room.
This is it.
I already want to leave the room. What?
So Joe, goes outside onto his stairs to investigate, and he's looking around. He goes down the stairs, looks around the yard. As far as he can see, there's no one there. So he goes, okay, maybe it was the wind. I don't know. He turns back to his apartment, and a man in a red shirt races out of the apartment, and he's completely soaked head to toe, as though he's been in a pool.
Oh, this has got to be one of the victims. This has to be one of the victims that's trying to communicate.
Sadly, yeah.
Yeah.
So Joe, being the one who's experiencing most of the things in the house, decides to be the de facto ghost hunter and starts recording stuff. When he asked one spirit who it was, the voice recorder answered, the married one. None of the victims were married, only Herb. So it's possible that Herb was also on the property. And other people kind of report that too. Like there's a weird presence that makes you really uncomfortable.
And of course, some of the TV shows have overemphasized, a feeling of strangulation, a feeling of this. We don't need to talk about those shows.
There is one incident like that is a Joe incident, and I'm not 100% sure on this one, but I'll read it anyway. According to Joe, but from what source, I'm not sure. Joe and a friend named Jeremy, plus a few other friends, were in the pool, scooping dead beetles out of it, because I guess, the filter doesn't get them all. He was swimming underwater, and he felt a hand touch his back, and then something choke him. Yep. And he managed to escape and then, thrash around and get his head above water. And then he made all his friends get out of the pool. Now, that one I'm not sure on because it sounds very
Hollywood.
Magical. Yeah.
But, okay, so I have something important before we wrap up. I have breaking news.
Okay, but
breaking news.
We got pause with music. This is very important. The coroner's office of Hamilton County, Indiana, they have teamed up with a local ministry, and they are unveiling a ossuary for the bones and a monument for the Fox Hollow victims that will be unveiled, and that is August 29th of 2024.
So that will be when this is already going to have aired.
So
that is breaking news because it's literally happening.
Yeah,
basically in 2 days.
Yes, and
so we
this recording and great. They have found 4 more samples of DNA that they feel they are close to identify. So they are looking for people who are trying to identify lost victims. So they're looking for families, and you can reach out to the Hamilton County Coroner's Office. Jeff Jellison is in charge of that. And the ministry is called He Knows Your Name Ministry. But Jeff Jellison and the Hamilton County Coroner are the ones doing this. They will be they did a press conference about this just a few days ago on the 22nd. And the 29th will be when it's unveiled.
And I will mention, if people want to help identify unknown persons, they can volunteer at the Doe Network, who I have volunteered with before. They're great. Everyone there is lovely. And you help make a database for victims and missing persons. Highly recommend everyone there.
This will be the only time these people are buried officially and have an official service. And the coroner's office can be reached at 317-770-4415. We'll try to put that in the show notes.
Yep.
We will. But I need to go back to the fact that, okay. Oh my gosh, I have so much to unpack here. And we only have a few minutes. Who presently owns this property?
The Graves family still owns it, but they've sold a couple acres to another man. I knew his name, but now I've forgotten
But
it.
he's
Who has,
developing a portion of the property.
yeah, as a winery.
And the police are still actively investigating the woods, so they're still not developing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that makes sense. And it seems like, I mean, here's the thing. I hope that they are able to identify and bring closure and answers to all of the families that have lost someone. And I think that's important. But this is horrific. And this sounds terrifying, like a truly terrifying place. I know we've talked a little bit about places like the Conjuring House, which are, that's all I'm going to say there. But my point is, you take a place like that, but you take a place like this where legitimately so much travesty occurred and so much brutality and so much death. And I can't imagine that this is anything other than, I don't think I could go anywhere near this place. I just think the, empathic side of me would almost explode.
I can't imagine. The Grays family do allow paranormal investigations with permission. You need to call ahead and reach out to them. But again, right now is not the time because they're doing the memorial and all that. So that would be actually our recommendation for travel for this episode is go to that memorial and
that sounds really nice.
My goodness.
Or if you can donate to this cause to help find closure, doing these DNA tests, I'm quite sure that one of the things they'll start doing is how they do it now, which is put it up through things like, 23andMe, where they put it out there to see if they can find family relatives of these people. But if your family or somebody lost somebody during this time period, a male, regardless of whether or not you think that they were gay or not, it's not a bad thing to necessarily put their DNA or familial DNA up just in case, that regardless of what their orientation was, it doesn't sound like he necessarily focused solely on that, but focused on people that he could victimize. So, Bo, this has been an amazing tale. Thank you for bringing it to us and sharing that. And I'm going to make sure there's nice giant space in between the next time you talk, because this is terrifying. I'm officially terrified, but I want to see a really good true crime documentary on this, because it sounds like there are so many layers to this in the paranormal. And one of the friends of the show, Shannon LeGros, did this. Mark, you mentioned that Shannon LeGros did this, and that was one of her first paranormal investigations.
Yeah, that was one of her first paranormal investigations. If you go to Into the Fray radio, we love her. Shannon's, was one of our early supporters of the Eerie, Florida days. So definitely go to her. That's actually one of her early Patreon specials, was her going to Fox Hollow Farm and talking to them.
So definitely check that out, because that will give you the whole spin. So, Bo, thank you so much. Travelers, get a chance, make sure you tag us in the pictures when you go visit that. We'd love to see, because I'm not going there. I'm probably going to end up going there, but I'm not going there right now. And with that, Mark, take us away.
Again, thank you, travelers, as always, for tuning in. And we know this has been done by others and all that. And again, remember, reality is completely different from Hollywood. We hope you enjoyed our take on this, and we thought it was important to bring back because of the current news of this. And for those of you out there who just don't feel accepted and we're outsiders and all that, just remember, you can always find your tribe, and there's always somebody for you. You're never alone. With that said, we'll just say one of the important stories was one of these families, Jeffrey Jones's family, the one that was recently discovered. The police came out because his mom donated DNA, and they were able to identify the bones. They handed her a box and said, "Here's your son." And with that, just remember, closure is so important. If you can help in any way, do. And remember, these things are dark, they're scary, and the dead want to be heard. and we'll see you on the other side.